Hey, it's Ollie from flightcomp, and today I'm going to just do a really brief video as sort of a wrap-up on the Pike Perfection VTAL that I've been flying. I did a kind of introduction video a few months ago about my Perfection VTAL, and I just gave you a really quick overview of the model, and I hadn't built it yet, but I've been flying this Perfection VTAL SL for, I don't know, it seems like it's been a while, maybe 3 or 4 months, maybe less. But I've got quite a few flights on it. I've got a number of contests on it, and it is a VTAL, and I was scared of VTALs for a long time, and I didn't really want to fly one. But this model has been really surprising, and I like it a lot. It's been great. It's actually been my primary model for the last few months, and I think really there was no reason to be scared of the VTAL because it's been great. And I'll tell you guys a little bit of my thoughts about this model and the way it handles, and maybe the way the VTAL affects the model. As far as setup goes, on the wing, I basically just copied the setups on my other Perfections, on my X-tails, for the throws and camber and reflex and all that stuff, and mixing. Obviously the elevator, the tails I couldn't do that with, so I basically set it up maybe per Samba's instructions, but really quickly I ended up putting a whole lot more throw in the tail. I think I might have something like 16 millimeters up and down, and maybe more than that as far as the rudder deflection goes, maybe 18 when this side's up, and I'm not really sure the exact amount when this side's down. The model weighs 60 ounces, pretty light compared to other Perfections. I would imagine that a SL X-tail would probably be actually about the same, maybe slightly heavier. I did have to put lead in the nose to get it to balance, and typically I don't put a whole lot of lead in my X-tails for balance, so actually none in my C68 X-tails. But I did have to put a little bit of lead in the nose, and as far as CG goes, I started out at a really rear CG of 117, and I really like it there. It's perfect for me in very calm conditions with that CG. It seems to give the tail a lot of authority. It's very, very responsive. However, it's a little bit more hands-on. It's not as stable, and it becomes hard to fly when the conditions pick up a little bit, when the wind picks up, if there's any turbulence, if there's a lot of thermals blowing through and a lot of sync blowing through. I think that far of a rearward CG is not beneficial in those conditions. So basically what I've done is I have a little packet of lead in the nose in addition to the lead that I already have in the nose to get the 117 CG, and I put that lead in or take it out to suit conditions. So with that lead in, it takes the CG to about 115, and that seems to calm the model down a lot. But I do lose noticeable amount of authority in the tail. I haven't tried it with something that Samba recommends with their CG, which I think is 112 or maybe even 110 or something like that. To me, that's just a too nose heavy, and I would imagine that you would lose a lot of yaw authority with that CG. So after I built the model, I took it out and basically just gave it a few hand tosses, and right away it really impressed me because I could almost feel through the sticks the weight of the tips and how responsive and light it felt, and it definitely is a little more nimble and a little more forgiving down low when you're hand tossing. It turns really tight. You can put it on the wing and crank the elevator, and it'll wrap around really well. And actually the first time I flew it, my buddy happened to get a little bit of video, so it's like the second or third hand toss. You know, I just hand tossed it once just to make sure it would go straight and level, and then I hand tossed it again, and I actually climbed out in a thermal, and had confidence with the plane right away. It wasn't, and it didn't feel like it was anything new. It felt familiar, but it felt better than the other Perfections that I had been flying. And it's been like that the whole time for me with this model. I can't say that I'm at any real disadvantage with this model compared to an X-Tail model. I would, however, state that I would only really pick the V-tail Perfection in the lighter layups, the LS or the SL, because I think that just having so much stick time on a C68 and some heavier versions of the Perfections, that I tend to believe that with the heavier tip weight, that mass out there on the tips, that this V-tail will probably have a harder time putting direct and precise yaw inputs into the airplane. So I wouldn't recommend a V-tail for a standard layup or a C68 or a heavier Perfection. I guess that's just personal preference for me, but I tend to believe that the V-tail would be much better suited to the lighter laminations of the Perfection. Okay, so where do I think the V-tail is good and where do I think it's bad? It seems to be good everywhere in calm conditions. I had a F3J contest a couple months ago, I think it was in April, and I flew this airplane about 75% of the time when the conditions were good. And I was in love with this airplane at that contest, and if you ask some of the guys on my team, if you ask my timer, they'll tell you the same thing. They were impressed. Landings felt good, really dialed. I mean, I was coming in just solid, straight trajectories all the way to the spot, no crazy inputs. It just felt really good. It gave me a lot of confidence. And another area where I noticed a huge difference between this model and my C68s is in the first round of each day, trying to get 10 minutes in dead air. I did that with ease with this airplane, and I don't think that's attributed to the V-tail at all, but it is attributed to probably the SL, the lighter version of the model, and I think the SL X-tail would have been just as good. Is the V-tail better than an X-tail? I don't know. I really couldn't tell you. Probably not. I think if you like the V-tail, get the V-tail. If you like the X-tail, get the X-tail. I mean, for me, I'm sort of a convert with this because I haven't put this airplane in a situation where the V-tail was bad, you know. And like I said, this is an SL, and I fly in relatively calm conditions. And when the wind picks up, I switch to the C68 X-tail. So it's been great. One thing I have noticed that is an improvement between the V-tail and the X-tail Perfection is in the landing approach. If you're in an approach and you're locked in, right? It's a textbook approach for you. You've hit all your time markers. You've made the base leg turn and you're coming into the spot, and you're on your sort of a glide path down to the money, down to the 100. I've noticed that this airplane responds much better to elevator inputs, and I'm more consistent and able to get closer to the 100 every time with the V-tail. And I think that's because there are situations with, I mean, the X-tail feels like that too, but there are certain situations where if I'm coming in for a landing and there's a gust, there's a change in wind direction, a thermal blows through, and with the X-tail, if I'm in a certain attitude and the nose kind of comes up and I push down elevator, nothing happens sometimes. It definitely gets in a situation where that model doesn't do anything, and I think it's because the wing is blanketing out the tail because the elevator's so low, and then all of a sudden, bam, it just snaps down, and usually I end up slamming the thing into the ground short because it really, I just wanted to nudge it down and it didn't do anything, and all of a sudden it kicked in and it slammed the airplane down. And when you're in that situation, you're just basically giving it more and more down until all of a sudden the elevator gets out of whatever turbulence or blanket it was in because of the wing, and it becomes effective again. This doesn't do that. I mean, it's much more controllable, and for me in calm conditions, I would rather have this in the landing approach. And the VTAL, as far as yaw goes, seems very good. It seems to have plenty of authority. It doesn't have the same authority as the X-Tail, but it's good enough, and it does the job, and it does it well. So I wouldn't say you're at a disadvantage with this model in most conditions as far as rudder authority goes. Again, I'm really happy with the airplane. I'm going to continue to fly it with the VTAL. I do have an X-Tail fuselage, and I want to put that together and compare, because I've never flown an SL perfection with an X-Tail. So it'd be nice to compare the fuselages back to back on the same day in the same conditions, and really see what feels better. I did spend a lot of time programming and kind of trying to set up the tails and making them work better for me. And I was using an SD10, and the SD10 Sanwa radio or Airtronics is really lacking in VTAL programmability. And I was talking to some guys, and they're saying you gotta do some stuff with the free mixes and blah blah blah. And I've always wanted a new radio. I've wanted a new radio for a couple of years, because I've been using the SD10 ever since it came out, I think in 2009. And so I got a JR28X, and I put it in this model. And that's kind of been a whole nother thing for me, because I took a really great flying model that was tuned very well, and I'd spend a lot of time getting it to fly how I wanted it. I put the new radio on it. I did my best to copy the settings, you know, manually writing them down, taking measurements. But when I flew the airplane, it didn't fly the same. So I'm in a situation now where I have to kind of go through, you know, go through all those steps again and tune the airplane. The good thing with the 28X is it has a much better VTAL control setup, so I can fine-tune my throws. You know, I couldn't really even get the VTALs to have throws that were equal, you know, in the various directions, elevator and rudder, with the SD10. It just wouldn't really allow me to do that, and I'm able to do that with the 28X. And I'm really anxious to be able to see if those little adjustments, as far as balancing the VTAL goes and differential, can make this model fly even better. The other thing also that I have is I've been trying a 5-degree joiner, but I did that at the same time that I put that new radio on it. So it's, you know, you're supposed to make small changes, like little changes, one at a time, and see if they work or if they don't. But I kind of threw the whole kitchen sink at the thing. I've been trying the new joiner, I got the new radio, going through the programming thing again, but I'm pretty confident that I'll get this thing flying as good as it was before, or hopefully even better. And I'll report to you guys how the new 5-degree wing joiner that I've been trying works. So, VTAL. To VTAL or not to VTAL? You should VTAL. Why not? It flies great. If you like VTALs, if you're a fan of VTALs, this would be a fantastic choice for you. If you're not a fan of VTALs, then get the X-Tail. You know, you got a choice. I'm lucky enough for the cars that I drive, they have plenty of room that I've not had to take the tails off ever. So they've been on since I built the thing, and I've never taken them off. So it really doesn't, it's not, transportation isn't an issue for me, or you know, trying to fit these in a car. But it would be a bit of a pain in the butt if you had to actually take these on and off each time, because it's not easy to get the ball links off. I really wish that somebody that made a VTAL model would just use a ball link that had a hole for a screw, so you could screw a screw through it into the control surface to assemble it, instead of popping on the plastic ball cup each time, or popping it off, because over time they wear out, and they wear out pretty quickly, and that's pretty sketchy to me. But not a huge concern. So yeah, perfection, SL, VTAL, fantastic. I treat this model as my hand launch model. It's got more flight time on it from hand launches than from any contests, and I've probably flown it in 5 contests since I've owned it. I take this thing out once a week and just hand throw it, and it's awesome. I mean, down low, wingtip, a couple feet off the ground, fully confident. I think I have some video. It might not be that great of the first couple of hand tosses, and I'll try to edit that flight footage into this video. And hopefully you guys can see how this thing performs. I do have a couple of flight videos that I've already loaded onto our YouTube channel if you want to see this thing in action. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Again, if you want to see more videos like this, just subscribe to Flight Comp, and we'll see you in the next one.